We begin today the Gemara towards the bottom of Samach Aleph Amud Beis, about 13 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara quotes from the Mishnah in the beginning of the Pedic. First the Mishnah says, Ezehu Neshech. What are the cases of Neshech, where you're over on the lav of Neshech? And then it says, Vezehu Tarbis. When are you over on the lav of Tarbis? And the Mishnah gives an example of Amarbe Bepedis, Ketzad, Lokach, Heimenu, Chitim, Bedinir Zav, V'chulu. The Mishnah goes on to say a case that is only Ribis Midrabanan, which the Gemara is going to elaborate upon soon on the Samach Beis Amud Beis. So the point though is that when it says Ezehu Neshech, it gives an example of Ribis Daraisa. The typical case of Ribis, where you lend to someone 4 dinarim and you ask him back for 5, or one amount of fruits and you ask him back for more fruits. And then when it says Tarbis, it says Ribis Midrabanan. So the Gemara asks on this, Otu, Kolhani Damrina Nad Hashta, the cases that the Mishnah says in the beginning, which are the examples I just gave, which are Ribis Minatayre, Lav Ribisu, are you not over on the Tarbis, on the Issa of Ribis as well? This is really something that the Gemara explained in the beginning of the Pedic, that every time you're lending someone money with Ribis, you're over on 2 Isurim. There's 2 Lavin. There's the Neshech, the Chesarim, what you're biting out of his money, and the Tarbis, which is the fact that you're increasing your money. So therefore here, the Gemara is explaining what's the pshat in the Mishnah when it says Ezehu Tarbis, and it only brings an example from Ribis to Rabbanan. Why? Amar Rabavo, so Rabavo answers like this. Atkan shel teire. What the Mishnah really means to say is, the examples brought up until this point is the Ribis min teire. And true, for that Ribis, you're over 2 Lavin, Neshech, and Ribis. Mikan ve'elech, when it says in the Mishnah, Ve'ezeu Tarbis, it's not really coming to give an example of Ribis min teire. Shel devreyem, it's giving an example of a Ribis which is only midrabanan. Another thing, of Rava said the same thing, Atkan shel teire. Until this point, the Mishnah is saying the Ribis min teire. Mikan ve'elech, after it says Ve'ezeu Tarbis shel devreyem, it's bringing on only an example of a Ribis midrabanan. Now Rava added another point, Atkan. Until here, the cases that is said before, which is the Ribis min teire, Yochin Rasha, V'yilbash Tzadik. A Rasha prepares, and then a Tzadik could dress himself in this. Now, what this expression means is, it's a pasuk, but it's being used here for an expression as when you have a person that lent money on Ribis, and he got paid back this Ribis, and now his children inherit this Ribis. The father was a Rasha, he got this Ribis. The children now that inherit this Ribis, they can use it for themselves, they can dress, they can use that, and they don't have to return this Ribis. So it sounds like what Rav is saying is, Atkan, meaning the Ribis min teire that it said before, we say that if you inherit this Ribis, you don't have to pay it back. So the Gemara asks on this, what does that mean? Atkan v'suloi, that means only the Ribis min teire which is said up until this point. That's where I say that if you inherit this Ribis, you don't have to pay it back. But you would think that the opposite should be true, not Atkan. For sure what it says afterwards, which is the Ribis midrabanan, for sure in such a case, you shouldn't have to return it. If you don't have to return the Ribis min teire, for sure not the Ribis midrabanan. So Ella, the Gemara clarifies, Afila Atkan Yochin Rasha V'yilbash Tzadik. The Chiddush over here is, needless to say, Ribis midrabanan, once you got paid that Ribis, you don't have to return it. The children that inherit this don't have to return it. But the Chiddush is, even the Ribis min teire that the father charged and received, but the children that get it do not have to return it. Another thing he said, Atkan Ribis Ktsutza. The first cases of the Mishnah is the Ribis min teire, which is called Ribis Ktsutza. So Ribis Ktsutza means it's fixed Ribis that you made up in the beginning when you started the whole loan. That's Ribis min teire. Mikan ve'elech, the other examples that the Mishnah gives afterwards is Avak Ribis. This is called the dust of Ribis, which is the expression that's used regarding Ribis midrabanan. Okay, so now here the Gemara is going to discuss a halacha where we differentiate between Ribis min teire and Ribis midrabanan. Amar Rabbi Lazar, so Rabbi Lazar says, Ribis Kitsutza, if this is fixed Ribis, which is the Ribis min teire, Yaitse b'dayanim. If you collected this payment of this interest, the judges, the Bezdin, will come and take it away, take it back, to give back to the borrower. However, Avak Ribis, if it's only Ribis midrabanan that you got, Eina Yaitse b'dayanim. So then the dayanim are not going to force you to give it back. Okay, some say that means that you don't have to pay it back at all. Others say all it means is that the Bezdin will not force you, but you should give it back yourself. Okay, so Rabbi Lazar made this distinction between the Ribis min teire and the Ribis midrabanan. Rabbi Yechanan argues. Rabbi Yechanan Omar, afil ribis ktsutza nami einu yaitze b'dayanim. Even when it comes to ribis, which is fixed, the ribis manatayre, once you charge it and you got it, the dayanim, the bezin, will not force you to give it back. Rabbi Yitzchak, so Rabbi Yitzchak says about this, my time with Rabbi Yechanan, what's the source of Rabbi Yechanan that says that this was ribis manatayre, but still you don't have to pay it back? Da makro, because there's a pasuk that says in Yecheskel, B'neshech nosan v'tarbis lokach v'chai. You think that a person that takes neshech or the ribis, you think that he's going to live? Lo yichya, as kol ha'te'evis ha'ela asa, he did all these abominable things, he's not going to live. That's what the pasuk there says. And the pasuk there actually concludes and says, sorry, mais yumas damav ba'yiyah. Okay, so now what do we dash from this pasuk? How do we see that you don't have to pay back ribis? Says the Gemara, we see from here lemisa nitten, that a person that charges ribis, so there's misa for this, as the pasuk here says. But v'loy leishavin, but to return the ribis, that you don't have an obligation. That's the drasha from the pasuk. Ravad the Barava explained the source of Rabbi Yechanan that even ribis menatayri you don't have to return is a different pasuk. And that's a pasuk in Chumash where it says the isur of ribis. It says al tikach miitay neshech v'tarbis v'yareisa melekecha. Don't take the ribis, and you should be afraid of the Eibishter. What do we learn from this? L'mayra niten v'loy leishavin. You have to be afraid of the Eibishter, but not that you have to return. So there's actually a few pirushim in this in the Rishonim. One shot is l'mayra niten means that after you charge ribis, you should be afraid of punishment that will come now. Which means even if you're going to return it, you'll still get punished. Another pshat is that l'mayra nitten means, what it's saying is that you only have to return it to be yetzi yedei shamayim if you're afraid of the Eibishter. Bidinei adam, the bezdin will not force you to return it. Which means that you actually see here that even according to Rabbi Yechanan that says ribis menatayra, you're not obligated, the bezdin won't force you to return it, but v'yireisa melikecha, if you're afraid from the Eibishter, you should return it. Rava says, migufei dekra shmile. From the pasuk itself, without a diak, from that pasuk from Yecheskel that was quoted before, that's where you see what Rabbi Yechanan said, that even by ribis menatayra, you don't have to return the money. Because the pasuk says, mais yumas damav ba'yiyah, that he should be put to death and the blood is on him. What does this mean? Hukshu, malvei ribis, l'shoif chidamim. A person that lends money on interest is like a person that spills blood. So, just like if you spill blood, you took away the person's life, you can't return that life. Same thing also, when you lend on ribis, this is something you can't return, because now the person that borrowed the money from you, and he's going to be pressed, and he's going to have to give you money that he has to use for food that he needs, and then he doesn't have food, and he dies in hunger. So it's like you spilled his blood, and therefore it's not possible to say that later you're going to return him the money. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak said, so we had all these sources here for Rabbi Yechanan's opinion. My time with Rabbi Lazar, what's Rabbi Lazar's source? That after you got the interest and you have a chiyuv to return it, the makra, because the pasuk by ribis, it says, this is the end of the pasuk where in the beginning it says, so the pasuk concludes and then says, your brother should live with you. What does it mean your brother lives with you? Ahadele, that means give him back this money, this ribis that you charged him, kehechi denechi, or kehechi denechi ba'adach, so that he can live with you. So here you see that you have to give it back so he can live. Rabbi Yechanan, according to Rabbi Yechanan, that says that no, there's no obligation to give back. We don't force him to give back this money of interest that you got. So what does you learn out from these words? Says the Gemara, he says we learn here from like what it says in the Braisa. Two people are traveling together on a way. And only one of them has a jug of water. If both of them are going to drink from this water, mesim. There's not going to be enough water for both of them, so they're both going to end up dying. But if the kitan of water will be given just to one of them, then Magia Yishuv, at least one of them will survive and will be able to come into a settled place. So what do you do? So Ben Petura darshan then said, Mutev, sheyishtu shneim, it's better, split the water, they should both drink from it, via musu, and then they'll end up dying. And one should not see how the other dies because he's taking all the water for himself, even though it's his water. Until Rabbi Akiva came and said, no, v'limed, and he taught based on the lashon of the pasuk here, v'chei achicha imach, your brother should live with you. What does with you mean? Chayecha kaidmen l'chayech avercha. You live, and then your brother lives with you. If you have enough for him, so you take the water for yourself. At least you should live, and not both of you should die. The drasha of Ben Petura is actually very hard to understand. What's the logic of both of them drinking from the water and then they'll both die? So I think it says in the Rishonim about this that we're not talking about a situation where if if both drink, then immediately their mamish going to pass out right away and die. We're talking about a case that if they both drink, then there's a danger that over the next day, if they don't encounter someone that has water or they don't get into a settled place, they're going to end up dying. So, but it's not definite. When they're going to split the water, it's not definite that they're going to both die. So in such a case, Ben Petura said, split the water and then rely that something's going to happen or a nest is going to happen, and don't take the whole water for yourself. Okay, but now, so we have here the machlokes of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yochanan regarding ribis ktsutza, which is the ribis minat Torah. When you already got paid that ribis, do you have to, does Bezdin force you to return it or not? So Rabbi Yochanan says, even by ribis minat Torah, you don't have to return it. So the Gemara here asks a few questions on Rabbi Yochanan. Meisvei, the Gemara asks from what it says in the Braise, that he niach lehem aviem ma'is shel ribis, if the father left for the children money that he got from the interest that he charged. Even if the children know that this is money that the father earned from ribis, the children do not have to give back this money to the person that it was taken from. Okay, so the Gemara is now medayik from this Braise. Now what does this mean? It sounds like here the Braise, or maybe it's a Mishnah, it's saying that the children don't have to return this ribis, but the father would have to return it. The Bacher actually adds in a few more words to make the Gemara clear. The Bach says, Inuhu de'en chayav lahachse. The children, they don't have to return it, but the father is chayav to return it. Okay, so now as Rashi explains, what it's saying over here is that the father has to return the ribis because of the drasha that Rabbi Elazar said, if you have to return it, but the children don't have to return it. And the reason is because ribis in the end of the day is not really a real gzela. If it was a regular gzela, then gzela of a father, the children have to return. But ribis is something that the person that gave it knowingly that he's paying this interest. Elamai, it's an isser though, to charge ribis, and it's similar to gezel. The father himself that did the isser, the Torah says for him, he has the obligation, return it. But the children that didn't do the isser, they don't have to return it. But the point is, we see here, like Rabbi Elazar said, that the father himself would be chayav to return it. So the Gemara answers, Bidinu davun nami lo v'chayav lahachser. No, really the halacha is, and the Mishnah could have here said, that even the father does not have to return this money of interest that he got. He doesn't have to return it. Now, so then why did it say in this Mishnah here only regarding the children, that the children are the ones that don't have to return it? And that's because of what it says in the Sefer here. The Aidi, the Kabbalah, Mishnah Sefer, because then in the Sefer it's saying another halacha which pertains specifically to the children, so therefore it said in the Reisha also about the children. What is the halacha it says in the Sefer? If the father left for his children a cow, or a garment, or v'chol davar ha'mesuyim, or any specific item, which is very clear what it is, that this was taken from someone. It's a cow, or a garment, or something specific that everybody knows that the father stole it from someone. So then, chayav and lahachse, the children have to return it to that owner, mipnei kavod aviyam. And this is out of honor for the father. Even after a father passes away, the children have to give him honor. And if they have these objects in their possession that the father stole, then it's something which is going to disgrace the father. Everyone says, look, their father was a ganev, look at that cow, look at that garment. So because the Sefer is talking about this halacha regarding the children, so the Sefer also says the case about the fact that the children don't have to return the ribis, even though the same would apply to the father, like Rabbi Yochanan said, that the father doesn't have to return the ribis either. Now, but the Gemara asks now in this answer, this explanation there, V'hani, mipnei, kovid, aviyah, mi, mechayvi, the children here, do they have to return these objects just for the honor of the father? For the case, for a father that was a ganev, and they're doing it for the honor of the father. Why shouldn't I say, kiri kan, apply here, what it says in the pasuk, v'nosi ba'amcha lo yisa'ir, a leader amongst your people, you should not curse. And we learn from this, why does it add the word be'amcha? Ba'oise ma'isa amcha. This is if it's someone that is behaving like a good Yid, doing the way he's supposed to be Mekayim Torah mitzvahs. That's the case where I say that you shouldn't curse him. But if it's someone that's not doing Torah mitzvahs, so then in such a case, if you're disgracing him, there's no Isser on this. So over here regarding the father that was a Ganev, so why are you returning it? And it's only for the reason, for the honor of the father, if it's a father that was a Ganev. Answers the Gemara, the answer here is, like Rav Pinchas said in the name of Rave, or Rabbe in a different place, or, in the name of Rav, he said in another place as follows, B'sha'asa tshuva. That the case over here is that the father did tshuva. So here the father was a Ganev, but the father did tshuva, so he's now Isa Maisa Amcha, so therefore the children have the obligation to do something which is the honor of the father. That's the case over here, the father did tshuva. So the Gemara asks, if the father did tshuva, my boy gabe. So why this cow, this talis that he stole, what's it still doing by him? What does it mean he did tshuva, but he didn't return it? Answers the Gemara, he did tshuva, he was planning on returning it, but he didn't get a chance to return it until he died. Okay, so this case is not a question on Rabbi Yechanan. Another question the Gemara asks, Meisvei hagazlonin umalvei ribis. People that steal and people that lend money on ribis, afal pisha gavu, even if they collected this money, machzirin, you have to return the money. Okay, that's the lashon of the Braisa. So now the Gemara first clarifies, it seems like it's saying two different cases, a case of a gazlan and a case of a person that lends on ribis. Gazlanin my afal pisha gavu ikke. Regarding a gazlan, how could it say here this expression of afal pisha gavu, even though they collected? What kind of a collection is there regarding a person that's stealing? Gazel. If he stole, so then he stole it. He didn't collect it. Eloi gazel. So if it's not a case of a person that stole, so then gazlanin kadislu. So why is it saying gazlanin? You're referring to him as a gazlan. So the way to read this over here is, it's really all one case. Gazlanin, a person that's a gazlan. And why is he a gazlan? My niu, what is the gzela that he did? Malve ribis, that he lent someone money on ribis. So afal pisha gavu, even if he already collected the money of the ribis, machzirin, he's obligated to return it. So you have here a clear braisa that says, not like Rabbi Yechanan, that a person that collected ribis has to return the money. So the Gemara says, Tanoi, so we have to say that according to Rabbi Yechanan, he says that no, even ribis minat Torah, you don't have to return. It's a machlekes Tanoim. The Tanya, as we see what we learned in a different braisa. Rab Nechemye, Rab Eliezer, Ben Yaakov, Poitrin, they pattered as a malva, vesa orev, a malva that lends ribis, with ribis, or vesa orev, a person that's a guarantor for a loan, and therefore what happens is he's the one that pays back if the loiva that can't pay back. As we learned already before, the isser of ribis is not just for the malva, the isser of ribis is for the loiva or for the orev, and as we'll see soon, even for other people that are involved in this, the isser of ribis applies to them. So, but the Braisa here is saying though, they don't get malchus for being over on this lav of ribis. And the reason is because they have a mitzvah say that they can do to correct the ribis that they charge or that they got. My kumvase. Now what is the pshat in this braisa? What is it talking about here when it says that for ribis there's a kumvase, there's something you can do to correct it, a lav hanitik la say that you don't get malchus. So lav, don't you think the pshat over here is mishum damrinan luhu kumu ahaduru? That what Rab Nechemye and Rab Eliezer ben Yaakov are saying is, we tell a person that charged ribis and he got paid the ribis already, or the order that paid the ribis, we say, give it back. So because we say, give back the money, so therefore there's no malchus, because you correct it by giving it back. This is what Rab Nechemye and Rab Eliezer ben Yaakov are saying. Now, Miklal, so from this I understand, this is what they were saying. So the Tana Kama, in that Braisa, the Tana Kama that disagrees with this, Sovar, he holds, La b'nei adurininu, that when it comes to ribis, there's no obligation to give it back. And if there's no obligation to give it back, so then as soon as you charge your interest and you get paid the interest, you're going to be chayiv malchus, because it's not nitlik lasei. So therefore that's the source of the opinion of Rabbi Yechanan that says that even ribis minat Torah, you don't have to give back. So the Gemara answers and says, Loi, no, that's not the pshat over here in this braisa. And really, as Rashi explains, and the Rishonim over here explain, that the pshat here is that really I could say the halach is like Rabbi Lazar, that by ribis minat Torah, you're obligated to give it back. But the fact that you're obligated to give it back, it's not nitik la'aseh. We learn it from the pasuk v'chei achicha imach, but it's not here to correct the lav. Even after you give it back, it doesn't correct the lav that you did before. You're still going to be chayiv malchus for that lav. That nobody argues about. Over here, when it says that we pater the malva and the orev, it was talking about a different thing. It was talking about an earlier stage in the ribis. And what is that? My kumvasei likroya shtora. What it's talking about over here is the kumvasei is to tear the shtar. Meaning, what this price is being lechadish is the isser of ribis doesn't only start when you get the payment of the ribis. The Isser of Ribbis begins, like you see in the Lashon of the Pasuk, it says, Lo sesimun olav neshach. Lo sesimun means, don't place upon a person, in a loan, a charge of Ribbis. The very fact that you're placing that loan creating a loan, placing upon him the charge of Ribbis, that's the Isser of Ribbis. Okay, but now, on this, so Rab Nechemia, Rab Eliezer ben Yaakov was saying, even though you charged him Ribbis, you were already over on the lav, but then you take that shtar that you charged the Ribbis and you tear it up, so then you're not going to get malchus because you charged him, but you tore up the shtar. Okay, but the Tanakama though disagrees with that. The Tanakama says as soon as you charge the ribis, you over the lav, it doesn't help to tear it up. That's what it's talking. That's this machlokes here. It's not in connection to returning the money. It's an earlier stage. Okay, so now the Gemara clarifies though this pshat. How are we going to explain the machlokes here? My kasava, what do they hold over here? If they hold like the opinion that says, and this is a machlokes between Beshama and Basil that's brought in different places regarding the status of a loan, which is a document for it. So over here, there's one opinion says, Shtar ha'omed ligvois kegavi domi. When the malva has in his hands a shtar that with this he can collect the loan, it's like it's already collected. Because he has that shtar that he can go and collect with it, so it's like it's collected already. So if we're going to say that that's the power of the shtar that you have in your hands, ha'av the yisarayu. So it's not only that they place the charge of the ribis. If you wrote a shtar on this, and the shtar is as if it's already collected, isn't it as if you already collected the ribis? And if you're tearing the shtar afterwards, what you're basically doing is you're sort of returning the money that you already collected with this shtar, which is like you collected it already. So why are we saying that they're arguing about an earlier stage before you actually collected the money, whether you can tear the shtar up or not to take away the isi or over? But if you have a shtar, according to the opinion that it's like you collected it already, so it's like you collected the money. So then it's the same point that we said before, that when you tear the shtar, you're sort of giving back the money that you collected. Now, if you're going to say when you have a shtar, then the shtar that you wrote is not like you collected it, so then just writing the shtar, you didn't do anything yet. You charged the ribis, but you didn't collect anything yet, so you didn't do anything yet. Why should there be any yisr at this point? Oh, so here the Gemara explains the point that I already explained before. Really, when you write a shtar and it is an interest in the shtar, it's not like it was collected already. This is the chiddush over here that it's saying the summa milsihi. Based on the pasuk that says the moment that you place the charge of the ribis right in the beginning, this is the time when the Isser takes effect right away, over the Isser. And it's regarding this that is the machlokes here in this braisa, whether the Tanakama says you cannot tear up the shtar anymore. Once you charge them the ribis, you're over the Isser. And according to Rab Nechemia, Rab Eliezer ben Yaakov, you only over the Isser that you charged if you don't tear up the shtar afterwards. If you tear up the shtar afterwards, then that's going to correct the Isser that you did. It's logical to say this idea that the Isser of Ribis starts already from before when you charge the Ribis, because it's not. We learned in the Mishnah later here in the Pedic. It says, the following people that are involved in a loan with Ribis are going to be over on the lav of Ribis, Hamalva, the person that lends the money, Va'aleva, the person that borrows the money for interest, Ha'orev, and the person that's the guarantor, Ve'ha'edim, and even the witnesses that are there to testify about this. They all are participating in this loan of ribis. So now the Gemara clarifies, say, what do we see here? Bish, Kulu. I understand all of them. Ovid Maisa. They're doing something involved in the ribis. Whether the loiva that is receiving the payment of the malva that is receiving the payment of the ribis, the loiva is paying the ribis, even the orev. The orev could be the one that's paying in the place of the loiva, and then later he takes that money from the loiva. So he takes from the loiva that charge of interest. So they're all doing an action that they're being involved in being over Isser. But the question is, Ele Eidim, my Ovid? The Eidim, what are they doing? The Eidim were there in the beginning by the loan when the charge of the ribbis was set, and at that time there was no ribbis paid yet. And then later on, the Eidim are not even there. What do the Eidim do when later on the Malva collects the ribbis or the Leva pays the ribbis? Why should the Eidim be over? You must say that the pshat over here is that based on the pasuk loisisim and all of neshech from the beginning, when it's a loan where there's a charge of ribbis placed on it, that is, so then there's going to be a isser of ribbis right there. And the fact that the Eidim are there to testify for that charge of the ribbis, they're enabling this loan to happen. Therefore, the Eidim are over for being there even at that time, right by the charge of the ribbis. We see over here this point that the Issa of Ribbis starts right from the beginning. Okay, now Rav Safra said, now this goes back, as we'll see in the continuation from the Gemara, to Rabbi Elazar's opinion. The point of Rabbi Elazar was that when it comes to Ribbis Menatayra, after you got paid the Ribbis, Bezdin takes it back. And when it comes to the Ribbis Midrabanan, Avak Ribbis, in such a case, when you got the payment of the Ribbis, the Bezdin will not take it back. So Rav Safra gave the following rule of how to understand the difference when Bezdin takes it back and when not. So Rav Safra said, Kol she'ilu b'dinehem maitziyim miloi v'lamalva. If it's something that if it was in a Goyish court, wherever there, of course, there's always interest that's charged in a loan, and there's no isser about this. So if this is a kind of a charge that in a Goyish court, they would take that charge of interest from the borrower to pay it to the lender, then b'dineinu machzirin. Then when it comes in a Yiddish Bezdin, this is a kind of payment of ribbis that even after the malva was paid this ribbis, the Bezdin will take it out and return it to the loiva. And this, as the Gemara in the end will explain, is only by ribbis menatayra. That's what he's trying to say. The Gemara is soon going to clarify why this is, because according to the rule that he's saying here right now, it seems like that if you're comparing it to the way it is by a Goyish court, this could apply even by ribbis midrabanan as well. But the Gemara is going to clarify. However, if it's a case of kol she'ilu b'dineyem eimetziyim aloy v'lamalva, if it's a kind of a ribbis that even in a Goyish court, this is not a kind of a ribbis that they would force the loiva to pay to the malva, then b'dineinu ein machzirin mi malva l'loiva. In a Yiddish court, if the malva already got paid this ribbis, after the fact, we're not going to force him to give it back to the loiva. Okay, so the Gemara now clarifies the first part of the statement of what Rav Safra said. So Rabbi asks Rav Yosef, are you telling me that this is a klal, that any time in a Goyish court, it's a kind of ribbis that the court will force the loiva to pay it? That's a type of ribbis min ha-Torah, that then in a Yiddish court, they would tell the malva to give back the money, and that would exclude any case of ribbis midrabanan. The Gemara here, Abaye here, is going to ask from a few cases of ribbis midrabanan that in a Goyish court they would force to pay. And still it's ribbis midrabanan, and in a Yiddish bezdin, they shouldn't force the malva to give it back. So the first case of the Gemara is here. There's a case of ribbis midrabanan, and that is v'harei sa'ah b'sa'ah. When you borrow a certain measure of fruits, and you're going to pay back the same measure of fruits. Now, this is ribbis midrabanan. Why is it ribbis midrabanan? Because you take a certain amount of fruits that right now is worth $10, and you're telling them, I'm going to give you back the same amount of fruits. The problem is when you pay it back, the same amount of fruits is worth $15. So now you're paying it back a value more than what you borrowed. So midrabanan, this is ribbis. Now, the b'dineyem, in a Goyish court, when you're borrowing this amount of fruits to give back the same amount of fruits, mitziyin mi loiva l'malva. This is something that in a Goyish court, they would force the loiva to pay this back to the malva. But over here, though, in a Yiddish bezdin, we're not going to force the malva to pay back this ribbis to the loiva. Why? Because this is ribbis midrabanan. So why is Rav Safra saying that we could use this rule to explain how only for ribbis menatayra you take it back from the malva, but not by ribbis midrabanan? Here's a case of ribbis midrabanan that you will, where in the Goyish court they will force the loiva to pay it, and in a Yiddish bezdin they shouldn't force the malva to pay it back. Omalei, so Rav Yosef explained, this does not go into the category of what Rav Safra was talking about. Why? Because by them, in the Goyish court, the way they look at this is, it's not they don't look at it as a charge of interest. When you give someone a certain amount of fruits, and then you tell them, pay me back the same amount of fruits, how do they look at this? They don't look at it as a charge of interest later when you pay and it's worth more. What they look at it is, it's like a pekadon. I gave you this amount of fruits, give me back the same amount of fruits. That's why he has to give it back. But it's not an Indian of the fact that you see that by Goyim they forced to give back interest. Rav Safra was saying a rule regarding interest. Where in a Goyish court, they force you to pay interest. This case, they don't look at it as interest, B'chlal. It's just an Indian of a Pekadon. So that's not part of what Rav Safra was talking about. Another case the Gemara asks from a Ribis Midrabanon, Amalei Ravina Ravashi, Ravina asks Ravashi, Varei Mashkante Belo Nachyaisa. When you have a mashkin, when you're not deducting the amount of the mashkin from the loan. So what this means is a person lends someone money and he's getting a mashkin, he's getting a collateral from the borrower. What's the mashkin? His vineyard. He says, I'm lending you this amount of money, but I can now use and eat from your vineyard. And then when it comes to pay up the loan, the lender ate from his vineyard, you should deduct from the loan that value of what he ate from his grapes. But no, we're not deducting. He ate from his vineyard, and then later when he pays the loan, he has to pay the full loan. This is Ribis Midrabanan. Okay, it's not Ribis Ktsutza, it's Ribis Midrabanan. We'll see soon why it's only Ribis Midrabanan, but over here, in such a case, this is Ribis Midrabanan. The B'dineim, in a Goyish court, Maitzien Miloive Lemalve, they will force this loive to pay back the full loan to the Malve, if that's what the deal was, even though the Malve already ate a certain value from his vineyard. It doesn't matter. He'll have to pay back the full loan. But ubedinenu, and in our bezdin, if this ribis was charged, we're not going to force the malve to pay it back to the loive. Why not? Because this is only ribis midrabanan. It's not ribis ktsutza. And Rashi here explains why not. Because over here, even though this was the deal that they set and they fixed in advance, that I'm going to eat from your vineyard, and still you're going to have to, in addition, pay me back the full loan. But you don't know if the vineyard is going to produce any grapes. So maybe it won't end up being ribis. You can't call it ribis ketsutza if it's not going to necessarily produce those grapes. It's the same thing, similar with the previous case regarding saw b'saw. When you take a certain measure of fruits and the person gives you back the same amount, where with the rabbanan there's a problem because the value can go up. You don't know if the value is going to go up. So this is all ribis with the rabbanan. So over here, this is another case where we see that in a Goyish court, you force the Levi to pay it, but in the Yiddish Bezin, you can't say that the reverse would be that you would force the Malva to give it back. No, you don't force him to give it back, because it's only Ribbis Midrabanan. So again, over here, the Gemara says a similar answer to before. This is not a kind of case that you could say that the Goyish court is forcing the Levi to pay interest. Why? On Malay, so he explained to him, Inu b'toira zvine asili yadai. When they force this person to pay the whole loan, even though the Malva already ate from his vineyard, they're not looking at it as a payment of interest. Rather, they're looking at it as if this was a sale. Which means that it's basically like the borrower is basically like selling his vineyard to this person, and he's telling him, I'm selling you my vineyard, you can eat from it, it's yours to use, until I'll have the money to pay for it, and then I'll get back my vineyard. And then when I pay, I get back. So it's like a sale for a certain amount of time, and then he pays for it. So they don't look at it as an union of interest, that he's being charged in a loan interest. It's like a deal in a sale. So that again is not part of what Rav Safra was talking about. Because now here, the Gemara concludes and clarifies what exactly was the pshat in the rule that Rav Safra was saying. Elo rather, kol she'ilu b'dineim, the ka'amar Rav Safra. Ma yasalash minon, when Rav Safra said that you have to look, that if in a Goyish court they force the Levit to pay, so then in a Yiddish Bezdin, you take it away from the Malve if you charge this. What was he saying with this? So the Gemara explains, Hachi yasalash minon. This is what he was saying. Kol she'ilu b'dineim mitziim miloiva lemalva. If in a Goyish court, when this interest was charged, they'll force the Levit to pay the interest to the Malva. So then, b'dineinu, in a Yiddish Bezdin, machzirem mimalva leLeva. This is the fixed ribis. This is the ribis minatayre. If the Malva got the payment of this ribis, he has to return it to the Leva. Omai niur b'ribis ketzutza. This is the fixed ribis. Okay, Rabbi Lazar. This is like the opinion of Rabbi Lazar that by ribis minatayre, you got paid, you have to return it. However, kol she'ilu b'dineim ein matziyim. Then the second part of what Rav Safra said, if it's a kind of ribis that in a Goyish court, they're not going to force the Levit to pay this ribis. B'dineinu ein machzirin. So then, in a Yiddish Bezdin, if the Malva got paid this ribis, we're not going to force him to give it back. Now, which ribis midrabanan was he talking about? Umay niu, as the Bach acts here. What is this? So the Gemara says, this is ribis mukdemes, and ribis mu'ucheres. These are two cases of ribis that the Gemara brings, or the Mishnah brings at the end of this peidik. There's a ribis which you pay before the loan. If the loive gives the malva a certain amount of money, even before the loan, he gives him $20 in advance, and then now you lend me $100. So he gave him already the interest in advance as a gift, sort of. Or after he pays his loan $100, later on, he gives him an additional gift of another $20. But it's not the interest together with the loan. It's either before or after. This is a kind of ribis that in a goyish court, they wouldn't force the loiva to pay it because it's not part of the deal of the loan itself. It's a gift that comes either before or after. So because in the goyish court, they don't force to pay this, so you see it's not set in the loan itself. This is only ribis midrabanan. This is the kind of ribis that Rav Safra was saying, that if the malva got this gift of this ribis, we're not going to force him to give it back. That's what Rav Safra was trying to say. Okay. Now the Gemara goes back to the case that there was in the Mishnah, the second case in the Mishnah, which was the case of ribis midrabanan. What did it say in the Mishnah? Keitzad. So the lashon of the Mishnah was that what's the case of ribis midrabanan? Loka cheimenu chitin bedin zav akor v'chein ashar, and then amdu chitin b'lamed dinarim. Okay, so what's the case of the Mishnah? We have to go over again the case of the Mishnah to understand what the Gemara is talking about over here. The case of the Mishnah is that a person gives someone a certain amount of money. Let's say he gives him $25, and he tells him, with this money, I want you to give me chitim, wheat, for the next month or for the next season. Okay, and he tells him that you're going to give me this chitim with this price, that I'm giving you the money now, even though later the price is going to go up. And if the price goes up, so now usually this is what's called when you're paisik money in the beginning, and then later the price could go up. So then this could be an issue of ribis. Why is it an issue of ribis? Because you're giving money at a cheaper price, and then what are you getting back? What are you being paid back in return? You're getting paid back that amount of fruits that you made up, but not the amount of those fruits that you're getting back is, let's say, $5 more. So now you're getting back more than the money that you gave in advance that you sort of lent to the seller. So therefore this is ribis, but it's only ribis midrabanan, not ribis minatayre, because it's in the framework of a sale. It's not a ribis in a loan. Okay, but what was the case of the Mishnah though? There's two exceptions to this isser of ribis midrabanan. One exception is when there's already a set market, or before I get to the set market price, one second. One exception is when this seller actually has that produce that he promises to give you over the season in his possession right now. He has it already. Yeshli. That's what's called yeshli. He has it already. Okay, so again, you're giving him $25 for a certain amount of wheat, and he's going to give you the wheat over a period of time. But he has that wheat now in his possession. So even if the price of the wheat later goes up, it doesn't matter. It's not like you're getting now a higher value later, because he has that wheat already for you in his house right now. It's as if it's acquired to you today. That's one exception. Another exception is what I was going to say before, if there's already a set market value price. Let's say you paid him $25 for this amount of wheat. There's already a set market value that it is $25 already now. Once there's a set market value price now for it, so then I say this seller, even if he doesn't have that amount of wheat right now in his possession, he could go out to somebody and get it right now for you. It's there, it's available. This is the price right now. It's already been set. So therefore, it's as if he bought it and he has it for you already now. So even if the price goes up later and you're getting back more of a value later, it's not going to be ribis midrabanan because it's as if he bought it for you and he got it for you now already. That was the beginning of the case of the Mishnah where it said that you paid a certain amount, you paid 25 dinner, the Mishnah says, for a certain amount of chitim, and then later the price goes up to 30, says the Mishnah, it doesn't matter, because there was already a set price from before. If it's a set market price in advance, then there's no issur of ribis. But then the Mishnah went on and said that what happened over here? The buyer came to the seller and said to him, give me my wheat. And the buyer tells the seller, now the wheat that I want from you is the wheat that's worth 30, which originally was worth 25. I want to have now the wheat according to the cheaper price, which now is worth more. And now the seller tells him, I don't have the wheat available for you. But the buyer says, I only want this wheat, not because I'm going to use the wheat itself. I'm going to use the wheat in order to be able to buy wine for it. Oh, so the seller says to him, you want to have wine? I'll provide for you wine for the price of 30 dinner. You'll get wine from me for the price of 30 dinner. Okay? And he doesn't give him the wine right now though. He owes him the value of 30 dinar of chitim, and he's replacing it and he's saying, instead I'll give you the wine because I know that's what you want, but he doesn't have the wine. So this over here, the Mishnah says this is an issue of ribis. Why is it going to be an issue of ribis? Because what happens if the price of the wine goes up by the time that he gives him the wine is worth 40 dinar. So then when he actually gives him the wine, he owes him wine in the value of 30 dinar, but then when he actually pays him the wine, it might go up to 40. So therefore that's going to be ribis midrabanan. Okay, but now the thing is though, the Mishnah clearly said that the issue of this wine being ribis, when you promise you're going to give him this wine for 30, and then later you give him that wine for 30, and it's really you're giving him wine for 40 because the price went up, the Mishnah clearly said that this issue of ribis is going to be he doesn't have any wine in his possession. That this Isser of ribis midrabanan is even in a case when you have already a set price for the wine right now. Even though there's a set price on the wine, nevertheless, it's still going to be an issue of ribis. That's where the Gemara is going to focus on. The Gemara here is going to ask on this, if there's already a set price, why are we saying that you can't promise him that you're going to give him the wine now based on the amount of money that you owe him today? You owe him 30. Because later when you actually give him the wine, it might go up to 40, but there's already a set price. The rule is whenever there's a set market price now, there's no issue of ribis, because once there's a set price, this amount of wine that you're promising, you can get it, the seller here can get it from anybody to give to him. That's the Nakud that the Gemara is going to focus on. Okay, let's see the Gemara inside. The Mishnah says if you don't have wine, if this seller now that has to pay this person, you have to pay him 30 sa'ah of chitim, and or actually have to pay him whatever amount of chitim in the amount of 30 dinner that is. And instead he's telling him he's going to give him wine. And he has no wine. And he says, I'll give you later the amount of wine in the value of 30. But why does it matter if he doesn't have wine? The question of the Gemara here is going to be, but the market value is set already. So once it's set in advance, it shouldn't be an issue of ribis. Why? Because Vatanya or Vatnam, we learned later in the Mishnah here in the Pedic as follows. Aim paiskin ala pedis. You can't give amount of money. This is the Isser of Midrabana, the ribis Midrabana, of being paisik in advance. When you give a certain amount of money for fruits, unless there was already a market price that was set already from before. Yotza ashar, once the market price was already set, paiskin, then you're allowed to give that amount of money in advance. Because I say, even if this seller doesn't have this in his possession right now, so then you could argue that later when he gives you this same amount, but the price goes up, so you're getting more than what you paid for, because now the price went up and you're getting back more. But it doesn't matter. Yesh lezeh. But someone else has it available right now when you gave him the money, and therefore this seller now could go and get it from someone else and give it to you right away. So therefore there's no isser of even ribis, even with the rabbanon. So over here in our Mishnah as well, when this seller is saying, I'm going to give you the amount of wine for 30 dinar, even if he doesn't have the wine in his possession, but if this market value was set already, why can't he go and get the wine from someone else? And it's as if he gave it to him now. And there shouldn't be an issue if the price of the wine went up later. So the Gemara answers, Omar Rabbe explains, our case is different than that Mishnah that we just quoted later. Why? Masnisim bebal lochu b'demei maskina. In our Mishnah over here, the case is that this is money that he owed you, that this seller owed you from before. There's no money that he's actually giving you now. What does the Gemara mean to say by this? In that Mishnah that we just quoted from later, what's the case over there? A buyer comes to a seller and he gives him money right now. He says, hey, I'm giving you $25 for chitim, for yayin, for whatever it is. And the seller says, okay, I'm going to provide for you later on this wine or this chitim. And he doesn't give it to him right now. He's going to give it to him later. We're concerned that maybe later the price goes up. For that we say, but if there's already a set market value right now, it doesn't matter if the price goes up later, because he can go and buy it from someone else right now. But what the Gemara is saying is, when do we say that svara? Only in the case where the buyer is actually paying that money right now. So the seller could take that money that he's getting right now and buy and get the wine for him that he wants, that he promised that he's going to sell him. Then I say that if the market value is set now, then there's no issue of ribis. But over here, our case is different though. The case of the Mishnah over here was that he paid for chitim a while ago. And now when he comes to pick up his chitim, he's not paying now. He paid a long time ago. Now he's coming to pick up his chitim, and the buyer is telling the seller, you know what? Instead of chitim, give me, I need the chitim just for the wine. So the seller tells him, you need it for the wine? I'll provide for you wine in the amount of 30 dinner that you want. And he doesn't have wine though now. And he says, don't worry, I'll get you wine later on. In such a case, we can't apply the svara that since there's a market value that's set, the seller can get that wine for him right now. He can't get the wine for him right now because he's not giving him any money right now. He gave him money a long time ago, but right now he's not giving money into his hands. So over here, you can't say that he's going to go and get him the wine right now. So if the price of the wine goes up later, so then that's wine that he got later for him. It's going to be ribis for the amount that he promised him today. That's the reason why our case is different. And the Gemara here brings a braisa that says this. As we learned this point in a braisa, if you were trying to collect from your friend a money of $100, let's say, that he owed you, and you go and you stand over there by his threshing floor over there where he has his wheat, and you tell him, pay me the money that you owe me. And then you tell him like this. The borrower says, I need my money. Why? What am I going to do with my money? I want to buy wheat now with it. So the lender, again, the borrower the lender is the one that's asking back for his money. So the borrower comes and says, the borrower says, look, chitim yashli, shani neisalach. I have a lot of wheat that I can give you for this amount of money. Say va'asei alai, go and calculate exactly money that I owe you. Calculate the amount of wheat. Kishar shel achshav. Calculate it according to the market value that's already set now. Va'ani ala lecha kol shnei masa chodesh. Over the next 12 months, I'm going to give you here this wheat that I have in my possession. So what does it say here in this braisa? Osir. That's not allowed. So over here you see in this braisa, even though the market value is set already, you can't tell him that you're going to give throughout the 12 months based on the market value that's set now. Why not? If the market value is set now, usually over here there is no issue of giving the amount of setting it right now. So the Braisa explains the svara that we said before, the lav ki isuroi habal liyodei dami, because you can't compare this to a case where the borrower is giving the lender the money, or actually the lender is giving the borrower the money into his hands right now. In a case where he's giving him money into his hands right now, the lender is giving the borrower money into his hands right now, and he's telling him, based on the market value from today, that's how much I'm going to pay you back. Okay, so then you could say that because he got money in his hands right now, and there's a set market value, he can go and buy in that amount now. The fact that later the price goes up, it doesn't matter. But over here, though, the case is that he didn't borrow the money now. He borrowed the money a while ago, and now he's asking him to give him back the money. He's not giving money into his hands right now. So in such a case, you say that even if there's a market value that's set right now, you can't come and make up that I'm going to give you this amount of chitim over the next 12 months. Because maybe after 12 months, the price is going to go up. And he didn't have money in his hands before to buy it. So therefore, the Isser of Ribis will still apply.
You give it to now.
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay, that's a very good question, because over here in the Freise, the case is that he actually has the chitim in his right. Yesh biyadai, so there shouldn't be an issue. That's a very good point. That's the next point the Gemara is going to say here. Okay, so the Gemara now says, okay, this was Rav's pshat in our Mishnah as well. So over here in our Mishnah as well, the reason why, even though there's a market price that's set, there's still going to be an issue of ribis midrabanan, because over here, you're not paying for that wine right now. But now, Abaye asks in this, Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says, if you're saying that the whole point of here is because he's not giving him money into his hands right now, so therefore you can't rely on the market value that there is today, that he can go and buy it. So then my area ain't loy. So why did our Mishnah say that the problem over here is that he doesn't have wine to give him right now? Afila yesh loy nami. Even if he has the wine in his possession right now, there should still be a problem. And the reason the Gemara is asking this, because that's what you see in the Braisa. The case in the Braisa is the person has all the wheat in his possession right now. And he tells him, I'm going to give you this wheat over the next 12 months. Still, the Braisa says there's an issue when, even though there's a market value that's set right now, you have the wheat in your possession right now, but as long as you're not giving him money for this right now, there's going to be an issue of ribis. So if so, the Gemara says we should apply the same thing in our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, it clearly said that the issue is because he doesn't have the wine in his possession right now. He's going to get the wine for him later. And that wine that he gets for him later, the price goes up. But in the Braise here, it says even if he has the wheat right now, it's still a problem. Now, the Mefarshim all ask the question, logically though, why should it be a problem? If he has the wheat in his possession right now, that wheat that he has, and he's telling him, here, you see all this wheat, I'm going to give it to you over the next 12 months. So he already has it in his possession. It's as if the lender is getting it back right now. Why should there be an issue if the price goes up later? It's not, the Gemara never clarifies this. So some say that this is all a Issa midrabanan, Issa of Ribis midrabanan. And because over here in this case, we're talking about a borrower that's not paying like in a regular case of a sale where he pays right now. We're talking about a borrower that he borrowed the money a while ago and now the lender is coming to get paid. So this, even though he has the chitim in his possession right now, it looks more like Ribis. If later the price goes up, it's going to look more like Ribis, even though really it's not Ribis because he has it in his possession right now. So it's Asam D'Rabbanan as well. So that's the question of Abaye. According to the Pshat that Rav said, in our Mishnah, it shouldn't have made the distinction between whether he has wine or doesn't have wine. As we see clearly in the Braise, it doesn't make a distinction whether he has the wheat in his possession now or doesn't. So therefore Abaye says a different Pshat in our Mishnah. Elam Abaye, so therefore Abaye says the Pshat in our Mishnah is different. Masnisin kedetani Rav Safra. The Pshat in our Mishnah is like what Rav Safra taught, and beribis the Beir Abchia by the halachas of Ribis that Rav Chia taught. The Tani Rav Safra beribis the Beir Abchia. He taught as follows: Yesh dvarim sheim mutarim. There are certain things that by Ribis would be allowed, but ba'asurim mipnei haramas Ribis. But it's not going to be allowed midrabanan, not because of avak Ribis. Avak Ribis means something that the Chachamim ased and considered to be Ribis. Haramas Ribis is something else, something which is totally not Ribis, but it's something that you're tricking and sort of avoiding the Isser of Ribis. What is that case? Keitzad Amaloi halveni mana. You tell a person, lend me a mana. Amalei mana ainli. I don't have a mana to lend you. Which a mana? What's a mana? As we'll see here from the continuation of the Gemara, every mana has 25 slime in it. So he tells him, I don't have a mana, 25 slime to lend you. But chitim b'mana yashli. I have wheat in the value of a mana that I can give you. Shani noisanloch, that I'll give you. So nasan lechitim. He gave him the wheat in the value of b'mana, in the value of a mana. That was the loan. So now he has to pay back 25 slime, that mana. That's the loan. But now, what does this lender do? Then he goes to the borrower and he says, sell it to me. And sell it to me, I want you to sell it to me 1 sela cheaper than what its value really is, than what I gave it to you for. Okay, so what happens in such a case? He sells it back to him for 24. Right, so, but then when the loive has to pay up his loan, what is he paying up? He's paying up the loan of 25 salam, the value that it was for real, that he gave it to him for in the beginning. So it comes out in such a case that he really lent you only 24 and you're paying him back 25. But in such a case, mutter. Over here, in this case, this is mutter. This is not ribis. The reason why it's not ribis is because it's not the regular way of the way ribis works is that you give someone money and you charge him interest for the fact that you're allowing him to use your money. Over here, what happened was he gave you the chitim without charging you any interest. Then he comes to you and says, sell it back to me, and he asks you to sell it back for a sela cheaper. So now it's the loive that decided to sell it back for a sela cheaper. That's not the malva that charged the ribis for allowing him to take the money for him now, which is what's usually called the schar of amtonas mois. So therefore, this is not ribis. But nevertheless, v'asa lasas came ibnei aramas ribis. You're not allowed to do this because this is tricking the system and this is creating a payment of ribis without actually having the charge of ribis on the loan itself. That's the halacha that was taught in the Braise. So now, Abaye says that this is the case of our Mishnah. Hachanami, here in our Mishnah, this is the case that we're talking about. Kagenda Omar, Halveni Shloishim Dinrim. He says to his friend, lend me 30 dinrim. Amalei Shloishim Dinrim mainly, I don't have 30 dinrim to lend you. Chitim b'shloishim dinrim yeshli. I have wheat in the amount and the worth of 30 dinrim. Shani Neiselach, that I'll give you. He gave him wheat for 30 dinrim, and now that's the loan. He has to pay him back 30 dinrim. And now, and then he sold it back to him. He sold him back this wheat, and by how much though? He sold it back to him cheaper. He sold it back to him for only 25 dinar, or 25 slime, that is, or 25 silver dinarim, which is what there is in a dinar zav. Okay, so now, so this is the case that we're saying that if you're going to pay him back later 30 dindim, so then you're basically paying him back in this oifen of haramas ribis, right? This is the case, the same case as before. So now the Gemara says it depends. This is what our Mishnah was teaching. It depends if you pay back money or if you pay back wine. This whole halacha of haramas ribis, chachamu and machmer, that this shouldn't be done if you pay back money. Then it looks like the actual ribis. But if when you're paying back this money now, which ends up being really more than what you got, but it's in a way of haramah, because it was just because the sale that you sold to him was cheaper. If you're paying back wine, which is produce or whatever other, it could be wine, it could be something else. Over here, this halacha of haramas ribis doesn't apply. And that's a distinction that our Mishnah was saying. So if the lender or the borrower there is, when he pays back wine. He's not paying back money. The yavle b'shloishim dinner, and he gives him back 30 dinner for this loan. So then he's paying back produce. He's paying back not money. He's paying back wine. The less lamba. There's no issue. The halacha of haramas ribis doesn't apply here. But if not, if he's paying him back money, even the less lechamre, he has no wine. He tells him, "I'll give you wine," but he doesn't have any wine to give back. He's giving him back money. Vadai mishkal zuzi mine. He's taking back money from him, so therefore mechzik ribis. This looks like ribis. It's the same issue of haramas ribis. That's the case that our Mishnah was talking about. So as Rashi explains, according to this, when it says in our Mishnah the lashon of that the Mishnah explains over here the case of tarbis, that what happened over here is that second, the lashon of the Mishnah was hamal v'sela. 1 second, no. Lokach imenu chitim b'dinner zav akor v'chen hasharon chitim b'lamed dinner omer lo ten li chita shani reitzel lemoichron. When it says here that he says, I'm going to sell you back these chitim, what is it talking about over here? It's talking about over here after the original loan, and now he's telling him that I'm going to sell it back to you, and I'm going to pay you back for the 30. That's what it's talking about over here. The Mishnah didn't say the beginning of the case. According to this, it comes out the Mishnah skipped sort of the beginning of the case. The Mishnah starts in the beginning of the story. Okay, this was Abayi's pshat in the Mishnah. But the Gemara here, Rav, let's just finish off with this. Rav is going to ask on this that there's a lot of problems in the lashon of the Mishnah with this pshat that Abaye says. So Amalei Rav says to Abaye, Ihochi. If your pshat is right, that's what we're talking about. The Mishnah is talking about this case of haramas ribis, and it's making the distinction that the isur of haramas ribis is only when you pay back money and not when you pay back wine. But if so, tanli chitai. It says here, the lashon of the Mishnah is that he says to him, give me my wheat. Why is it saying in the Mishnah, give me my wheat? The Mishnah should say, not give me my wheat. It should say, give me back the money for my wheat. Because according to the pshat of Abaye, he lent him wheat in order to, and he already bought back the wheat from him already for a cheaper price. And then afterwards, he wants him to pay back the full loan of the original value of the wheat, which was 30. So he's asking back for the payment of the money of that wheat that he lent him, not the wheat itself. That's what it should have said in the Mishnah. Okay, so the Gemara says, Tani demei chitai. So you're right, you have to change the lashon of the Mishnah. Instead of saying, give me wheat, he's saying, give me back the payment for the wheat that I lent you. Now, another question the Gemara asks, it said in the Mishnah, Sha'ani moichron, or Sha'ani reitzel moichron, that I sell or that I want to sell. What does it mean that I want to sell? He's telling him, give me now the wheat because I want to sell it for the price of 30. That's what the lashon of the Mishnah is. Why is it saying that? Shemachartim lach. According to the way Abai explained it, he already sold him back the wheat before on a cheaper price. That's what it should have said. So the Gemara says, we'll have to change that in the Mishnah as well. You have to learn in the Mishnah that he already sold it back to him. The Gemara asks, afterwards it says in the Mishnah, Harei chitecha asuyei salai b'shloishim dinarim, that right now your chitim have the value of 30 dinarim, and he tells him, I'm going to give you in that place 30 dinarim for wine. That's what our Mishnah said. But the question is, according to the Pshat of Abaye, meikara nami hachi ekmini yalavei. In the beginning, that's what the value of the chitim that he gave him was. He gave him in the beginning the value of chitim for 30, And then he sold it back to him for a cheaper price of 25. That's the way he described the case. So why does it say that now it's worth 30? So the Gemara answers, this is how you have to read the Mishnah. For the money of the chitim which you gave me that was worth 30. So Taka goes back on the money of on the chitim that he gave him from before. But the Gemara then asks, what does it say afterwards in the Mishnah? He's telling him, I have, instead of the chitim, I have wine for you. But he doesn't actually, he says, I'll give you wine, but he doesn't have wine right now in his possession. And one second. Okay, this actually goes back to before. Okay, this is a continuation to before, where he tells him, I have to pay you for those 30 dinner, and he says he's going to pay him, and he says he's going to pay him wine, but he doesn't have wine, and instead he pays him money, so therefore that's a problem of haramas ribis. Okay, now here's the last point the Gemara asks. In the Mishnah it says that this amount of wheat that he gave him, in the beginning, what was the value of this amount of wheat that he gave him? It was only worth a dinar zav, which is 25. And v'chein hashar, that's the set price of what this is now. According to the way Abai explained in the Mishnah, he actually gave him wheat that's worth 30. Then he sold it him back for a cheaper price of 25. And that's how it becomes a ramas ribis, because later he's asking him to pay him for the full loan of 30. So why is the Mishnah saying that the set price of this is 25? The set price wasn't 25, the set price was 30. So it doesn't fit into the lashon of the Mishnah over here. So therefore the Gemara is going to continue and explain that Rav goes back to his pshat that he said before. The Gemara is going to prove it, as we'll see.